Okay, Madam Chair, we are ready to begin. If you'll just let me let in those who are in the waiting room. Okay, we are ready to begin, Madam Chair.
Okay. So good evening. Welcome. It's 5:32 and I'm calling the September 14, 2021 meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. Please silence all cell phones, and may we please have the roll call?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Member Hanson?
Present.
Member Miller?
I am here and trying to get my video up.
Okay. Member Rosenau?
Here.
Member Kaiser?
Here.
Vice Chair Nelson?
Present.
And Chair Huff?
Present.
And looks like our only absent person here. Oh, Stephen is there as well. Stephen Rose.
Hi there.
Okay,
Sorry.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Very good. So may we please have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of the Council Chamber and the Planning Department counter in accordance with established policies and procedures.
Hey, does the board have any revisions to the agenda? Okay, may I? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rose? Nope.
There's a few slides here to share with all of you tonight. So thank you for joining us this evening. The agenda this evening, just for the purpose of housekeeping.
Gary Johns, do you have your microphone on, or could you mute it, please?
Background noise.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So were there any revisions to the agenda? So may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, so I have
I will second.
Okay, and who was the second?
Miller.
Scott Miller.
Scott, okay. So I have a motion by Rose and a second by Miller. Is there any discussion? So seeing none, I called for the question. All in favor of the
Aye.
motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? So motion passes 7-0. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values all comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any actions on items that are not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned for each potential speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the hearing. So, Mr. Lyon, has anyone requested to comment on a non-public hearing item or item that's not on today's agenda?
No, Madam Chair, we've had no request for anyone to speak.
Okay, very well. Seeing that there are no speakers, we will proceed to agenda item number 1, the consent calendar, and there are no items. So we will proceed to number 2, election of officers. May I ask Mr. Lyon to conduct this, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just for a matter of information for the board, you may recall that you've done election of officers only a few months ago. But at the request of the city clerk, in order to try to get all the boards and commissions on the same monthly cycling for boards and commission chairs and vice chairs, they asked us to reestablish the board's choosing of chair and vice chair. So at this time, I would like to open up the nomination for members for the position of vice chair.
I'll nominate myself.
Okay. Are there any others at this time who are nominating for vice chair? All right, so Jade Nelson is the candidate. All those in favor of Jade as the vice chair of the HSPB, please raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, so we have 6-0 on that. Congratulations, Mr. Nelson. You are vice chair once again. I'm now going to ask for your nominations for the position of chair.
I, of course, nominate Catherine Howe.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, may I have a vote for Catherine Huff as your chair?
Show me voting yes.
All right, so we have 6-0. Congratulations, Madam Chair. You are chair again.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes.
With respect to chairs, there's a wonderful new exhibit at the A&D Museum about the history of chair. So I would urge everyone to go see it because it's wonderful. And it's done by Brad Dunning. Just, it's a good thing for chairs.
Great. Thank you.
I agree. I recently saw the exhibition. So let us proceed to agenda item number 3. There are no public hearings today. And then there's no unfinished business. So that brings us to new business, agenda item 5A. And this is a review for potential redesignation of a Class 4 site to a Class 1 or 2 historic resource initiated by an application by Peter and Sabine Woolley, owners requesting approval to demolish a Class 4 site located at 855 North Hermosa Drive. May we have a report on that, Mr. Lyon?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As noted in your staff report, the building at 855 North Hermosa Drive was built in 1950 according to building permit records, and thus by virtue of its date is automatically deemed a Class 4 site. The applicant in this particular case is seeking to scrape the entire site for the purposes of constructing a new home on the site. On pages 2 and 3 of your staff report, you can see images of the home as provided by the applicant and those that I have pulled into the staff report. I believe most of you also had an opportunity to visit the site, at least to see it from the public right-of-way prior to this meeting, those of you who wish to do so. The analysis of the project and its potential eligibility as a Class 1 or Class 2 site begins on page 4 of your staff report. And as noted in going through there, we have identified that there are various owners who the applicant has provided this information on. And also I forwarded to each of you some additional information that was gleaned from the public record by member Nelson. So you should have all received that this afternoon prior to this meeting via email. As noted in the staff report, there is nothing that we found that was particularly exemplary or noteworthy from a historic perspective about the structures on this site. And so we are recommending that the board take no action and allow the processing of the demolition permit for this structure. I'm available to answer any questions. And Madam Chair, if there are questions of the owner, I will be bringing them in via telephone because they are not able to access a computer in order to participate in the Zoom meeting today.
Okay. So first, does the board have any questions for the staff? Any questions?
No.
All right. And if the applicant wishes to talk to us more about the property, is the applicant wanting to comment by phone?
They didn't have any other additional comments that they wanted to offer. They just wanted to make themselves available if there were any questions by the board.
Okay. So are there any further questions by the board to the applicant or to staff? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, just a general observation that it was clear that there's not much integrity left to the existing structures on the site. And therefore, I'm in favor of demolition.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, may I please have a motion? A motion? Mr. Kaiser?
I move that we accept the report and let the demolition proceed.
Okay, and
I
how about a
second.
second? Okay, so there is a motion by Kaiser and a second by Rose. Is there any discussion about this? Okay, seeing no discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. Let us proceed to agenda item 5B. 5B, Joseph Mantello and Paul Marlowe, owners for historic site designation of the Donna Wexler resident that's located at 1272 East Verbena Drive. The staff has recommended that we receive the report and direct staff to schedule a site visit and have a public hearing. May I have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
I
Okay.
move that, oh, I second.
Rosenau, okay. So I have a motion by Mr. Rosenau and a second by whom?
Mr. Rose,
Mr. Rose, okay.
just shorten Rosenau.
Okay, good, good. The roses are here today. Okay, so is there any discussion about this?
Just fabulous piece of architecture, yay.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes, good. Okay, so seeing no, oops, Mr. Nelson?
Just a commendation to the writer of the report, Mr. Keelan, for really covering every single aspect of the property. I learned quite a bit, even though I thought I knew a lot about this particular house, and it's extremely well written and researched.
Yes, and I reread the Wexler book that was published on the occasion of the exhibition at the museum and enjoyed looking at better photographs and drawings of the home. And I too enjoyed the report, and thanks so very much for that special attention. So with the motion, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or comments? So I will call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. Let us proceed to discussions agenda item number 6A. So 6A is the 2021-22 annual work plan. May I turn it over to Mr. Lyons to lead the discussion?
Certainly, thank you. As noted in the memo that you have in your packets, the summertime is usually when the board begins looking forward at the priorities and things it wants to try to accomplish in the upcoming fiscal year. I've put together the memo noting that typically there are two components to your work plan. Those sites which you'd like to consider for recommendation to the City Council for historic designation and education and outreach. The first part of the staff memo notes that your work plan for the previous year included the Courthouse Pension, the Arabi Adobe and Rock Houses, the Security First National Bank building, the gas company building, and the Willard Martin residence. That was a revision that was made at the June meeting in which you brought Security First National Bank in and moved the fire station number 4 off from this year's work plan, and may choose to put it into a subsequent work plan perhaps. So I want to just remind you that I have reports and professional service consultants in progress on the Courthouse and the Arabi houses. And as I noted here, we're also pursuing securing a peer review professional services report on the Security Bank report. The reason we're doing this is that this is an item that was brought forward by a private entity and requested the board take this on as part of its work plan. And so what we're going to do at this point, because the owner does oppose this particular designation, we're going to do a peer review on this report in order to make independent findings by a consultant of the cities on the analysis that was done in that report to substantiate it, so that when you go forward with consideration of it at your public hearing, we will have a furtherance of the assertions in the report and the eligibility of it. On the education and outreach components of your work plan, I've noted on the second page of your report some of the things that typically you take on. The symposium is obviously the pride and joy of the HSPB in terms of your education and outreach efforts. We've also continued on an ongoing basis to participate with the unmanned booth at Modernism Week when it is held at the convention center. This past year, of course, was canceled due to COVID, but we are planning on having the booth available again with handouts and so on, as we've done in the past, if Modernism Week at the convention center does go forward. We've also, on a routine basis, made presentations to various real estate offices and the real estate board in terms of the updates that have happened in the last couple of years relative to the historic preservation ordinance. And I've reached out to the realtors board again. There were some members who were interested in some additional outreach, and so I'm preparing some updated PowerPoint presentations for that. On the last page of this report, I've noted that the other thing that I've been speaking with Director Fagg about is that some of our informational brochures and things that we have as paper handouts at Modernism Week may be useful and valuable for the public to also have as viewable PDFs on the website. So I think we're going to be trying to load up some of that material out of the website as well for information to the public and to educate them. So with that, I would also note that I have received from a couple of you some notes and listings of possible sites for consideration. But at this time, what I was hoping we would do is I can take a listing from each of you of what are your top 5 or 6 or 10 or however many you want to put forward in terms of those sites which you individually feel merit being on the board's priorities for those sites that you would work on for possible historic designation recommendations to the City Council. So, Madam Chair, I would suggest, I have no particular formal order to this. If perhaps you would like to start us, if you have any projects or properties that you would like to consider to be listed, I will take note of those. And as I've mentioned in the past, what will happen here is we'll take this information, I will combine it, I will send it back out to you as an email, and I will ask for you to prioritize them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 10, so that when I come back to you in October, I will have for you what you all have voted in terms of the top 5 or 6 sites that you collectively have voted on to be the ones that you'd like to carry forward. Are there any questions on this? No. Madam Chair, would you like to start us off with your list of?
Yes, I would be happy to. And of course, I have the 6, at the top of the list, and those are the ones, that we established, this past season, which you have mentioned, but I'll just say it for again, the Courthouse, the Arabi, Adobe, Security Bank, the gas company, the Willard, Stephen Willard Morton Residence and Gardens, the fire station number 4, And then I would like to add, I've been thinking about the Arthur Elrod office, which is the former Arthur Elrod office, 850 North Palm Canyon Drive. And so I'm interested in that. Of course, Caliente Tropics Hotel is an interest to me as well. I don't know what can be done or what about the, former Saks Fifth Avenue building. That's 490 South Palm Canyon Drive. But that former Saks Fifth Avenue building interests me. Those are kind of the ones that have come to the, to the top of my lists. There's so many. So I'd like to hear from some other people. Mr. Miller, or did you? I saw your yellow light go on. Who would like to go to speak next?
I can.
Rose now. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate the gas company building. I think that's a really important one, as well as keeping fire station number 4 on the list that we had from last year. A couple of additional ones that popped into my mind were the old the old boxing club there by the airport, which is now, I believe, the homeless center, a really important building that's very on display when you leave the airport. And another one I had was the Hugh Captor designed clubhouse on Golf Course Drive. And I really like your idea of I didn't think of it, I was there at the Caliente Tropics this week, and I really like that idea as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I got 4 on that one. Do you have any others, Eric?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Who's next?
I don't really think that we
Hi,
should,
sir.
I would take the 6 and we don't need to add anything at this point. Since I've been doing this for 6 years, one property that we started out with within those 6 years has been designated. So I think that this is quite an ambitious plan, the way that it stands, and I don't feel that any additions will help at this year.
Okay.
Appreciate your comments on that. Who's Member Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Madam Chair and I have been discussing it briefly before, and I have suggested the Caliente Tropics along with Fifth Avenue, and we both agreed the office building at 850 North Palm Canyon is a very strong contender that was originally designed by John Porter Clark, and Arthur Elrod did modifications to the exterior of the building. Provided that the Security First National Bank goes forward with the Courthouse and the Irby houses, gas company is number 1 on my list, followed by the Morton Residence and Garden, which we've been trying for I don't know, over a decade. I think it's time. Fire station number 4 is number 3 for me, but I just like to know that it's not endangered. So if for some reason it could get pushed down and something else took its place, I would be okay with that. Because obviously it's just undergone a historic restoration, and I don't think it stands any danger at the moment. Other items on my list are the Palm Springs Courthouse across the street from City Hall, built in 1962 and a Class 3 site, done by John Porter Clark and Albert Frey. I believe, I may be wrong on that. I also have on the list 611 South Palm Canyon Drive, which is the Sun Center by Donald Wexler. It's one of the few properties he did in that period that are not on Indian or tribal land. As we know, some of his other buildings with a similar method of concrete construction have either been demolished or are endangered. I also have on my list 1555 East Alejo, which is the United Methodist Church, which is a Class 3 site. And that would conclude pretty much everything that I'm interested in with moving forward on for this calendar year. I would like to know that we only got 2 things really fast track from our work plan in the last year. And of course, with the pandemic and everything, it was difficult to do anymore. But I think we have an opportunity to really do at least 4 or 5 seriously. And I think Mr. Lyon would probably encourage us to do that. And hopefully we're able to have the funds and the staff, time and energy with all of our help to do that.
One thing I might just mention, Jade, I'm not certain, the 1555 Alejo, which church building is that?
That is the United Methodist Church on Alejo Road near Sunrise.
I think that's also in section 14 and therefore would not be eligible for the city to process.
Oh, really?
That's part of, section 14 runs from Alejo to Sunrise to Ramon to Indian.
So is that the case even if the church owned the parcel?
Yes.
So how would somebody go about that?
If the church wanted to pursue historic designation, they would make an application to the tribal historic preservation officer, and they would take that up in the same way that the single family home over in Twin Palms, I believe on Caliente Drive, was processed by the tribe.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay, who's next? Mr. Rose?
Yes, I think that 6 is a smart thing to stick to as well. Those are very worthy buildings and would love to see some of those accomplished. I have one question, and I probably shouldn't even be doing it right now, but you know, there's a fabulous clubhouse at 7 Lakes that Bill Cody designed. And I don't know whether that's even designated or whether you have to consider that as a whole part of the 7 Lakes development, but it's just extraordinary, and it's also in very original condition and something that we may want to consider.
Is that something that you would like to include on your list of work priorities?
I would love to. It's really very special, and I think some of Cody's best work.
And that was the 7 Lakes Clubhouse, you said?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Member Hanson?
Yeah, I have more of a general comment and kind of an observation as somebody new on the board, and I too am fine with you know, the 6 that remained from the plan from last year. But it just occurred to me, you know, in looking at this list and looking over the list of resources in the city, I mean, certainly Palm Springs is a city of architecture, but historic preservation does cover more than just architectural history. And there's so many properties that are designated in the city that are significant architecturally, perhaps for an architect and a prominent person or family also associated with the building. But I'm wondering if, you know, just as throwing it out there, maybe not this year, but as a broad thing for the board to think about, increasing the diversity in the themes that are represented by the city's inventory and list of designated resources generally. And I did look at the ethnic and cultural contexts that were prepared as part of the citywide survey update. It does look as if quite a few properties have been demolished, not surprisingly, over time. And some of them, I believe, even started outside of Palm Springs and were then later on sort of annexed into the city. And I'm not as familiar, of course, with these types of resources as all of the longtime residents and members of the board might be. But I'm just thinking of that is something, you know, to strive for as a long-term goal in terms of setting priorities for properties that are designated. And also I was noticing, and this is probably part of the discussion, I know it's one of the things Ken has on the list for priorities for the city council symposium workshop, work plan. You know, if there was a searchable inventory even, it would have been possible, for example, to sort the properties that are designated by theme and context so that you can actually get a better idea of, how much is architecture represented and how much is, some of the other ethnic cultural type themes represented by the city's list of designated resources. So just something throwing out as food for thought. It's kind of maybe more of a long-term goals and aspirations for the board.
I think it's a very good point, Member Hanson.
Very good. Thank you. Would anyone else like to recommend some properties? Anyone else? Okay.
Who's
and-
missing? Is somebody not done? Because I've only noted, I have Catherine, Eric, Dan, Jay, Stephen.
And I haven't said anything yet.
Okay, Scott.
Can you see me?
Scott,
Yes.
can you turn off one of you've got two things going here, so we're getting feedback. I have both your iPhone and I have you showing up as another entity here without,
I'm trying, is that better?
I'm trying to close the other one.
Echoey.
yeah, if you can close one of them because we're getting feedback.
Turn your phone up.
There, you got it. You did it.
Is that better?
Yep, you got
Yep.
it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with the comments that have been made about the extensive list that we've already, developed. So I'm all in favor of those moving forward. And can you answer the question for me on another property that I was interested in, but it is also in section 14. So I guess it's ineligible. That's the Lady of Guadalupe Church. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then also, Ken, if you could just enlighten me, what is the current status of the Tockwitz Plaza, 600 to 700 East Tockwitz?
That's a class 1 building.
Okay, so it's already designated and been approved. Okay. Then I'd say I'm ready to move forward with the list that we have. I do like the idea of the Caliente Tropics, which was brought up originally by Catherine at some point on the list. I like that building as well.
Okay,
That's it.
very good. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, Member
Yeah.
Nelson.
One more comment regarding the second page of the memorandum provided by Mr. Lyon. I just wanted to single out the last part about staff recommendations for other initiatives and opportunities for fiscal year, I'm assuming that's supposed to say 21-22.
Yes.
And the first item is apply for a grant from a Certified Local Government Program through the State Office of Historic Preservation. I think that would be a wonderful thing for us as a board to do. And I would love for Mr. Lyon to educate us a little bit more about that and see how we go about that process. Is that something he would do on our behalf, or do we help him with it? Or, when's the deadline? What are the details? I think that's something that would be really beneficial to us as a grant.
Okay. Do you want me to kind of summarize it for you now or later?
Sure.
Send out it. Oh, okay.
Well, the CLG grant program happens annually. We typically see the submittals going in the early spring. A condition of submittal is that we must have had our annual report submitted. So as you know, last year, and those of you that have been on the board for a few years, each year I ask you to make sure you keep track of all of your education and continuing education, lectures, seminars, workshops, webinars, anything else that are what I would call continuing education enhancements for your performance and service on this board. Keep track of those because I need to be able to list those on that annual report. The actual submittal of a CLG grant is kind of time consuming and a little convoluted and requires the city to commit to a certain dollar amount of matching grant. So it's kind of, I don't remember, it's 1-to-1 or 60-40. the reason that I'm bringing it up today in your work plan thoughts is that it's going to take some time to put this thing together. And we had put one together several years ago when we actually had, the city actually had a grant writer who was pursuing grants of all kinds. Unfortunately, that person is no longer with us. So, we're really left to individual staff members and departments to put these kind of grants and things together. So if you are interested, I will pull some information together for you at your next meeting, and we can talk about it further at that point. Janet, did you have a question?
Yes, I'm happy to say that I've written over 20 certified local government grants, and I have 100% success rate.
You're enlisted.
And I would be happy to help. I have a
I would
great
love-
template.
I would love your help.
Yeah, so I've got a great template and it would be kind of fun to work on, but yeah, 100%. I even, when I worked for the city of Riverside, I got 2 in 1 year there. too.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Well, I did notice that LA has gotten them almost every year. So
Yeah.
They've been very fortunate.
And the city of Riverside when I was there. as
Yeah,
well.
and I think we have good standing as a city with the Office of Historic Preservation in Sacramento. I think they would be encouraged to see us submitting a grant application again. So I'll bring some information together. Janet, if I can, I'll reach out to you as well. I would really appreciate your resources and expertise in helping me on that.
The only thing I guess that I would have to make sure of, since I'm on the board or the state commission, just to make sure there isn't some conflict of interest. I don't know necessarily why there would be.
I don't know if there would be either,
Because
but
the
we can double
commission
check.
doesn't have anything to do with selecting grants, but I would just check on that to make sure there wouldn't be any kind of a conflict with them.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Member Hanson. That's very generous to use your expertise in
Are
this.
there other things that from a education and outreach perspective that the board has any thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions, criticisms, anything? It's really, this is really the board's opportunity to think about how you promote and educate the community about the values and the importance of historic preservation. And, in my 14 or 15 years of being here with the city, I've seen it really go from a situation in which historic preservation was almost a dirty word to a city in which the city council is enthusiastically embracing it because it's a major part of our cultural tourism revenue that the city brings in. So I think that you're in a very fortunate time to be on this HSPB because we've had some fairly good support at the city council level that hopefully will continue in terms of their support of historic preservation activities. Any other questions, comments, or suggestions on your work plan?
Are we, I'm a little confused maybe, we're still on 6A? Because we're discussing, okay.
Work plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are we ready to go on to 6B, which is the areas of focus for the city council visioning session?
I think yes, we are. And what I'll do, Madam Chair and board members, is I will summarize this list for you. It looks like it's going to be a pretty easy slam dunk for you to prioritize these things, but I'll get it out to you so that we can return this and finalize this for your October meeting.
Great.
And under the next item, I will turn it over to Director Fang.
Madam Chair and members of the board, can you all hear me?
Yes.
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 My primary computer has frozen. And so I'm working off of my laptop and hopefully the meeting is still recorded. Jay, Vice Chair Nelson, can you see the transcript still? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's frozen on my screen, so I was a little worried that it was not going any longer.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, good, good. So with those technical issues out of the way, there's a specific reason why we are discussing this item after you've discussed your work plan, is that you've probably already made some of the hard decisions already in terms of what we're going to be forwarding to the council. let me give you just a little bit of background in terms of what you're being asked to do. The City Council is scheduling a visioning session, which will be coming up in November. The purpose of their visioning session is to really look at two things. Number one, they have a lot of work that they want to get done. And number two, they have a limited budget to do it, and they have limited staff time to accomplish those things. And so they're having a visioning session in order to perhaps hone that list of projects that they want to work on and expend staff time and general fund monies accordingly. In terms of coming to their list of what their priorities should be, they've asked each of the boards and commissions to forward on their top 2 priorities. And so that's what we're asking you today is what are the things that you would send forward to City Council as being your top 2 priorities? We're going to break this down just a little bit, as you'll notice from the attached page that you have in your packets. We have under the current fiscal year, your ongoing priorities and areas of focus. And so that will be 2 things that you're currently working on. And then the second category after that is new priorities and areas of focus. Here's what I might suggest to you is that there are 2 principal activities that you all have focused on generally. Number 1 is the designation of historic properties. And so that's why we've come up with our list of 6 or so properties which you feel merit designation, and with the budget that we have available, we proceed in doing the historic resource reports and bringing those forward to you. And so that one's pretty much a given, is that we want to continue that program. And so that would be one of our ongoing priorities. The second thing that I see as one of your ongoing priorities is education and outreach. The symposium that we do every year is an important component of education. By making that program available to the public, we're able to educate the public about the importance of preservation, the techniques of preservation, and I think it's really been an effective program, and we appreciate the board members who have helped us put that program together over the years. So those are really 2 of the things that I see as being your ongoing priorities and areas of focus. City Council has been very generous over the last 5 years in terms of allotting a budget of about $50,000 each year to carry out those activities. And so that has served us well. So I see those as things that we will continue to do on an ongoing basis. But what I would like to do now is look at new priorities and areas of focus. So outside of those 2 activities, what are other things that the board would like to work on in terms of things that you'd like to send forward to the City Council to have them think about as well? One of the things that comes to my mind, I'm just throwing this out there, is we've talked about adding properties to our Class 3 list. Those that certainly merit some additional research and expending funds to do the DPR forms or the initial research forms for those to include on the Class 3 list. That's one that I might throw out there that we've talked about as part of our work plan, and something that we probably want to do on an ongoing basis is always evaluating and making sure that we're identifying properties that are worthy of designation. So that's just one thing to get the discussion started. But I'd like to throw that question out to you. In addition to historic designation and education components, what are some of the other things that you as a board would like to work on? Or what are areas that you think that we should spend some more of our time? So I'll open it up, and just anyone who has any comments, please go ahead and throw those out there. Vice Chair Nelson.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this falls under that category, but in terms of new priority areas of focus, something we just discussed recently a few minutes ago was the certified local government grant. Would that be something that would fall under that? And would City Council be involved? Would it be something we would say to them that we want to apply for this grant and they would be part of that process?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that you could include in your list. what you might want to do is perhaps be a little bit more specific in terms of programs or things that you would fund with that grant.
Great, great. And then the other question I had regarding that was, I feel that we as a board may be kind of in the shadows and not doing as much as we can with the Plaza Theater, which obviously is a city-owned property and a huge thing that I think as the HSPB we're kind of, it's kind of our responsibility to help oversee that this project can begin to move forward, and how do we help the committee that's behind saving it? Because I know that they're trying to raise money, and I think it would be great if there was maybe a meeting, like a public meeting between HSPB and that committee, and then we could create or formulate recommendations or plans together and then send that to council. Because it seems to have been backburnered, and I think it's really crucial to our town, our history, and our downtown core.
Excellent suggestion.
Mhm.
Other thoughts?
Mhm. To add to what Member Nelson said, to really focus on properties that have already been classified, and we all care about them, but they're getting to be so endangered. Like the Plaza Theater, we kind of lost the Racket Club. If we could focus on properties that we've already designated and we consider them class 1, but what can we do so that we don't lose them? If they're vacant, if they're at risk, if they're going to catch on fire and burn down. And I'm so worried about vacant in properties that have a high classification. Is there something that we can do to be more proactive rather than just kind of wait and see? I feel really urgent that we need to preserve and conserve these properties that are in danger. And I'm not sure, how we can do that, but I think it's kind of frightening to me.
And would that be such as a maintenance program, for example, for designated properties?
Maybe. Absolutely. I don't know what we can do to be more proactive about these endangered properties. So maybe looking at methods and means to protect and conserve them better. So that it's like, well, why didn't we do something?
Okay.
So would
Mr.
you be
Rosen?
talking, would that be talking about revisions to the ordinance or a separate program?
What I'm hearing from the chair is that it might be a separate program, really focusing on conservation or maintenance of properties that have already been designated. One of the things that comes to my mind on a regular basis is looking at the properties that the city owns that are designated. City Hall, to be quite honest, could use a little bit of maintenance. There are other city facilities that aren't in the shape that they really should be as, landmark structures. And so I think that's an important point that the chair brings up, is that there's a number of properties where they could use some additional maintenance to really bring them back to where they should be. And Madam Chair, correct me if I've misinterpreted that, but that's one of the things that I see.
No.
You mean like a landmark preservation commission or something?
Well, more like really the means to guarantee the ongoing maintenance of those types of structures.
Someone would have to obviously head that up and be in charge of doing that as well as funding.
Yeah. Member Rosenau, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, sort of going along with what Catherine had just said. I had an email discussion briefly with Mr. Lyon this morning regarding the Town and Country Center with regards to murals being painted on the wall and especially fencing that has been torn down. And Mr. Lyon did contact code compliance really quickly regarding it, but strengthening our historic board's relationship with code compliance to make sure that things are actually getting done when we report them, making sure that the building owners live up to their class 1 designations. Because for me, the town and country center is a building that's just sitting there waiting to be burnt down by the homeless inside or things like that. So it's really necessary that we keep track of an ongoing, keep track of these vacant buildings and that sort of thing.
Mhm. Like doing regular inspections of
Correct,
historic
yeah.
properties.
Yes, very
Okay,
much so.
okay, terrific suggestion.
Mhm.
Other thoughts? Okay, so of the suggestions that I've had so far, we've had number one, looking at applying for the certified local government grant to fund programs as a priority. We've looked at the restoration of the Plaza Theater as a priority for the HSPB. We've looked at ongoing maintenance or a maintenance program for properties that are designated. We've looked at strengthening the relationship with code compliance and doing regular inspections of designated properties. So out of that list, what would you say would be your top two that the HSPB should focus on or forward to City Council in terms of the things that you think are most critical? Mr. Nelson, Vice Chair?
Yeah, is this something we have to decide on today, or can we, we report back to you what we think?
Yeah, we do. I have to forward this to them before the end of the month, so we do need to decide today.
Well, for me, I think the maintenance is extremely crucial. And I wanted to add that I was today at the library voting, and I have been debating about adding the William Cody Library to our work plan. I know that it had been added in years past, and there was some controversy around it because it was city-owned property, and the library wanted to add on or whatever. There was just controversy. But I did notice when I was there that it was suffering and that it had some deferred exterior maintenance. And it was kind of an embarrassment. Parking in that southwestern parking lot, kind of right off of Sunrise there, as you drive around the back of the building and walking up to the learning center to vote. It was just, there were trees that had been cut down and there were dead plants and, there was overflowing trash and, there was some vagrants nearby, and it just, I know it's always been a source of problem for the city, but I think that maintenance program could probably go a long way toward making the exterior of that building prettier. And I wonder if we should even maybe add it to our work plan. Maybe Ken could give us some background on, whether that would be a good option. And then for me, the other thing would be the grant, because I think that's something that Ken has brought up year after year after year. And it's been more than 5 years since it was done last, so I think time. So I look forward to hearing what everyone else says.
Mr. Rose, what would you
Yeah,
identify?
I agree. I think a landmark maintenance program should be priority one, and second should be the grant.
Okay.
And I agree, attention to the endangered properties, that's such a high priority. And it's really our responsibility.
It is.
That's really high, and maybe we could get some grants to help with that, help preserve our endangered properties. And of course, the Plaza Theater falls right in there too, because that's
One of them.
endangered. That's one of them too. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with those as well.
Me too.
Okay. I seem to have everyone nodding their heads. So it seems like those two are the ones that we'll go with for our new priorities and areas of focus.
Fantastic.
One of the other questions that they're asking, is there any activities that could be deferred, referred, or eliminated? I'm just going to put my foot down and say no. That everything that you do is important, and we're not focusing on unimportant things right now. So if you don't mind, that's how I'm going to respond to that question. In terms of any critical organizational changes needed, is there anything that we need to do relative to staffing or to the composition of the HSPB that needs to be made or changed at this point in time?
Can I add to the question?
Certainly, Mr. Lyon.
The notion, if we're going to get serious about doing annual grant submittals, I think might be something that some portion of an FTE to assist in that would be helpful. The second thing that comes to mind is whether or not it's going to be appropriate to possibly bring on some additional staff resources in order to do the 5-year audits on all of the Mills Act properties that we have. We're required by our contracts to review these properties on a 5-year cycle to make sure that they are keeping the properties maintained and that the historic characteristics are being preserved and taken care of. And we've simply had no staff resources in order to do that. You and I have talked about this a while ago, Flynn, and so it's just a thought that came to mind as you're bringing these things up.
Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts on organizational changes? Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, just going back to activities that could be deferred, referred, or eliminated. I did make a note earlier before the meeting just about how to maybe make more efficient or streamline the time and energy that's expended by staff and our board members, if it might not be helpful to refer more nominations for properties to an outside organization such as PSPF or maybe the newly formed Conference Architectural Alliance. If either of those organizations have any interest, I know one of them is new, but they might be a good ally for any really architecturally significant building that might come into the pipeline. And we already know that PSPF has a lot of experience writing nominations. Just seems that some of the buildings that we put on a work plan are kind of a no-brainer for PSPF to research and write about because they already have a lot of the information. Rather than us going to an outside agency and spending all of that money when there's a lot of local resources that could probably handle it. So that was my one thought on that. And then I missed what we identified as the priority 1 and 2 of the ongoing priorities and areas of focus. Could you reiterate those?
Certainly. I'm doing these in rather broad categories, but number 1 is the designation of properties. And so that's the historic resource reports and nominations that we do. And then the second area is education and outreach, which is our symposium and any other educational activities that we do, such as to the Board of Realtors, et cetera.
Great, perfect, I concur.
Okay. The last question is relative to process improvements. Are there any things that we could do to improve processes for the board? One of the things that's suggested in the list, and I'm calling this out because I feel it to be important, is improving the lines of communication between the board and city council. I see this not only with the Historic Site Board, but also with the Planning Commission as well, that there are times where direction from council on certain actions is not always clear. So that's a good process improvement, is to have better communication with council. Can you think of any other similar things that we would want to recommend to the city council in terms of process improvements? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I remember like 10 years ago or so when a member of the local media would come to our HSPB meeting every month. and then write a little article in the Desert Sun, and it really kept the community informed and abreast of the issues. And that seems to be lacking these days because everyone relies on Facebook or social media or whatever, but we as board members cannot put anything on social media just because it's not wise, and we have we have laws and ethics and things that we have to abide by. So a lot of times we want to say something, but we can't. And so the media isn't there to do that for us. And the other thing I used to notice was that, pre-COVID, kind of hard with Zoom, there would always be a member of each organization sitting in the audience. And lately, we seem to have representation from at least one organization, but not some of the one or two others. And maybe that's because, some of the members are involved with multiple organizations, so they're kind of relying on that. But it just seems like you were saying before, that whole outreach, community outreach, education thing could be improved. And I think probably because of the pandemic that it has suffered. But it'd be wonderful to get some kind of local media back into the fray, whether it was Conference Live or a community paper or even the Desert Sun.
Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts about process improvements? Okay, seeing none, I really appreciate your thoughts tonight, members of the board. I'll go ahead and transcribe your recommendations and then forward those to the City Council. And again, I appreciate all the work that you do with historic preservation, and we'll make sure we forward those thoughts to the council and let them know how important this topic is to us as well. So thank you. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. A really good passive information. Thank you so much for doing all that groundwork for us to lead that important discussions. So next on the agenda is one of our priorities is the 2022 Preservation Matters Symposium. And our committee, our little subcommittee last met by Zoom on July 15th, and we discussed many symposium topics and possible tours of properties as well. And we completed a list of potential presentations for further review and discussions, kind of working through the summer a little bit. And so our next meeting is this week. We have a meeting coming up on Thursday, September 16th. And at this meeting, we're really going to get down and compile a more complete list after the meeting and having the opportunity to explore many things over the last couple months. And so we will have a list of ideas, and then we will. I would like to share that list with the board for you to review and give your ideas and points of view about them, and possibly help us work with presenters and how we can move forward. So the date reserved for the symposium is on Saturday, April 23rd, 2022. And we have a reservation at the Palm Springs Convention Center, as far as I know. And the location for the second day, which would be the Sunday, the 24th, has yet to be determined, and hopefully we can discuss that at our meeting on Thursday as well. So Mr. Lyon, are we pretty well confirmed for that date at the Convention Center, April 23?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think that the Sunday is potentially available,
yes.
Although I know in the past, the subcommittee has felt that the second day usually draws a smaller audience. So maybe a smaller venue or a different venue adds to the interest. but I just throw it out there that I think it may be potentially available should the board and subcommittee want to do the second day also at the convention center.
Mhm. So Member Nelson, Member Kaiser, do you want to add anything to that comment, or we'll report more next month? Member Nelson?
Yeah, thank you. I think maybe it might be helpful if anyone on the board today or tomorrow or even Thursday morning early had any thoughts about something that might be fun or good for the symposium, because if we wait another month, then the whole month that we've lost. So we're having some issues with some of the topics, and so if any of you have any ideas about something that you think would be interesting that hasn't been covered in the last year or two, whether it be a fun or serious topic or related to architecture or preservation or something educational for the second day, please email me or Catherine or Dan, or maybe just Catherine or Dan, so that we don't have too many people emailing at once before then, because I think the more input we get, the better. And it is worth noting that the people who were going to create an audiovisual presentation may or may not be able to assist us for the April event. So that's something we're going to have to discuss and come to a determination on. And I'm sure we'll be talking about that on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And another thing is we often have a subtitle to the preservation matters. So some a unifying theme that ties the sessions together in a meaningful and relevant way. So if you're, thinking of a kind of overall theme that you'd like to tie things together, we'd love to hear about that, because we often like to do that. Last year it was, the three R's, restoration and reuse and renovation, or I can't remember the 3 R's from last year. Anyway, so preservation matters in what way? So would love to hear from you if you have ideas about that as well, because we'd like to wrap that up. So any other comments from anybody, or questions or ideas that at this point?
Catherine, how many are we expecting Thursday morning here now that the Hovels can't come?
Okay.
I've got a count of 5 or 6.
So just Mr. Lyon, myself, Nelson, and yourself, and Dick Burkett. So that is that 5?
Okay.
5 of us. Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you for allowing us to come to your home. It'll be nice to meet in person. I'm really, it's hard to continually work on Zoom. It's nice to see face to face. So thank you for allowing us to come to your home to meet.
And excuse me for leaving, but I've got a yard full of workmen and you can hear all this banging going on. So I'm a little on call.
Okay. All right. Well, we can move right along to board member comments. And I would just like to say, in light of our earlier conversation about, the endangered properties and the risks that are, that have happened, especially, all the code compliance breaches that kind of had happened over the summertime. I know that there's been, repeated reporting and I think the code compliance is getting tired of hearing from us. But especially the town and country that we mentioned either, and I'm sorry to keep bringing it up. But it's a great risk. And is there anything that we can do until we have something more formally established? I mean, we're just scared to death that it's going to catch on fire and burn up the whole block. So I don't know if there's any interventions that can be made by staff that have more clout, or the council that has the clout that we need, that how can we as a group, as a community, be a little bit more proactive and protect these properties? How can we better serve and I mean, what can we do with the fire department? Should we all become volunteer firemen? I don't know. Anyway, it's just a call for, it's a cry out for, is there anything that we can do? That's my comment.
Can I just offer some feedback to that question?
Sure.
I don't think you should ever worry that you're becoming a pest to code enforcement. Their job is to take care of code enforcement matters around the whole city. So whether you see graffiti on the building, or you see dead trees, or you see fence breaches like Mr. Rosenau saw and reported this morning, please report those. The best method and the best action that you all have as a board is making code enforcement aware that you've seen something. I mean, it's the old cliche, see something, say something. And that is probably the most effective tool that you have. The second thing, with respect to specifically the Town and Country Center, I'll speak with Flynn later, but maybe we can reach out to the developer and see if he has a schedule in terms of what he envisions moving forward with actually beginning that phase of the downtown project. Because Block K, which is what comprises the Town and Country Center, was originally identified in the downtown specific plan as the final phase of the redevelopment of downtown. Now, I know that there's still a residential type of building that I believe is going to be built across from the park. So perhaps, again, I don't know if that's still what the phasing and scheduling is, but maybe we can have the developer give us a bit more clarification as far as where he sees his schedule going in terms of bringing back the Town and Country Center to a viable, filled, restored space.
Member Kaiser.
I think what would be very helpful, because Michael Braun is really a very nice, sensitive guy, is a few of us would get together and welcome him into a discussion rather than asking for a schedule or anything else, and becoming like trying to work with him as a group rather than being, we're asking you for a schedule, the city's asking you for this. We need to embrace him into a small group of people here and encourage dialogue and feedback. That is something that we can do as a group, which as we need to be honey, not a hammer in this case, because it's been a hammer for years, and see where it stands. It's better, but it's still where it is. And I think we need to embrace him and bring him into our team slightly.
Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, on that note, regarding what Mr. Kaiser said, what I keep coming back to is the vacant building ordinance. And because Town and Country Center is mostly vacant, I would say, over 60% of it is anyway. And I would like to know if there's something in that ordinance, some kind of language that says how long. I know we talked about schedules, but there's got to be something in there that says once the property had been identified for rehabilitation, you have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, what is it? And when that time is up, do they have to reapply and present a new plan? Because that seems to be happening with a lot of buildings. The Orchid Tree Inn is another great example. So I'm kind of curious, what is the time limit, and what actions are taken when that time runs out, and how can the HSPB or historic preservation be a part of that action? It can elaborate on that. I also have 3 board member comments, but I'm happy to save those if anybody else wants to elaborate on this town and country thing.
I'm not going to be able to speak to any detail on the vacant building ordinance because I don't work with it regularly. It's available on the city's website under the municipal code. So any and all of us here can review that municipal code section.
Mr. Rosenknapp.
I have a question specifically for the town and country, but more generally, who provides the security and wherewithal to keep track to make sure? Is that a city? I mean, other than the code compliance, who's going out there and making sure the homeless people don't actually invade the building or keeping them out, that sort of thing?
I'm not sure I'm catching are you saying is anybody?
Well, yeah, who is it the responsibility of the city to make sure, or is it the building owner to employ their own security to make sure? Because there's basically a lack of security right now at the town and country center. So it's like no one really is protecting it, and then the building's becoming more and more vulnerable as it continues to sit there.
Well, I think as it relates to the town and country building specifically, the city council sought from and got from the developer slash owner a security plan that was put in place a few years ago. And maybe what needs to happen is that resolution under the security plan get reviewed and see whether or not the owner is in compliance with it or not. But it seems to me like the fencing and there was signage and lighting and cameras or something that was part of that security plan. And maybe that needs to be reviewed just to see if the owner is in compliance, and again, meet with the owner to express the city's concern. Generally speaking, though, the city is not out, other than what you see with code enforcement, patrolling or inspecting. Complaints around homeless and things like that are handled by the police department also. So it's a multi-pronged challenge.
Mr. Nelson.
With all due respect to the whole conversation and the staff, it just seems like, the owner developer of this property, Town and Country and Orchid Tree, basically have gotten a free pass to just keep beating around the bush with these 2 properties, and they just get the delays and they just keep going on and on and on. And I don't really understand. I wish there was some kind of concrete explanation as to why they're allowed to continue this way. I know under the previous mayor, we revised the vacant building ordinance, and the previous chair worked behind the scenes to help ensure that this was changed, and it doesn't seem like it's affecting any real change that the previous board had hoped for. And I'd like to know why that's the case. Is there some way we can get some kind of answers for all that?
Well, I don't know if there's one single answer, Member Nelson, about the question about why a development project doesn't move forward. But you can look around the city and you can see the Dream Hotel, which is north of the convention center, and you can see Cody Place, which was vacant and idle for years, and the Racket Club, and many, many other development sites which received approval from the city, and then the developer either lost their financing or had some other issue that came up that kept them from moving forward with completing the projects. Each site tends to have its own set of characteristics, dynamics, and challenges. In the case of the Town and Country, there was a pretty serious effort made by the city council to get that developer to do more to make sure that building remains secure. In the case of the Orchid Tree, it's the same kind of thing. You've got a developer who keeps coming through with various applications. The city makes approvals on the applications and then the developer doesn't move forward. The city is not in a position to be able to do a taking or anything like that on these buildings. We're really at the point where you've got to have a developer who has their financing in place in order to actually move forward and complete a development project. It's each case tends to have its own challenges. It's not a one size fits all. I do think in the case of the vacant building ordinance, as with any ordinance, it works when you use it. And I know that in the case of several different projects and properties, work between code enforcement and the city attorney's office using the vacant building ordinance has gotten stagnant building owners to deal with their problem buildings. So there are instances where the vacant building ordinance is working, but like with any other ordinance, it's an ordinance that you've got to make use of, that you've got to be doing the things that the ordinance allows the city to do, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Thank you for that. I do know that the vacant building ordinance does require security. So is there any way that this board can make a suggestion, a recommendation to the planning commission or to the planning department to pass on to city council that Town and Country requires immediate attention in terms of security, which should be covered under the vacant buildings ordinance?
I think that it requires us going back and first looking at what the security plan was that the city council and the building owner agreed to. I think that's where review of the Town and Country Center building needs to begin.
Okay, thank you.
And I would agree, reviewing the security plan and that, the ordinance. But I do think Mr. Kaiser's recommendation, to get with our local owner, for the Town and Country property, particularly because they are local, they live here, they really do care about our community. And I think getting together and having a friendly introductory kind of discussion about our concerns and what we can do to be proactive, to work together on solving this problem, and instead of having to do the heavy hammer, as Member Kaiser said. So anyway, well, we're all so very concerned. Are there any other comments from board members this evening? And anything else, Mr. Nelson? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the three comments I had that I didn't get to yet, I'll try to keep them quick. They're really comments in the form of questions for staff, and I would love an answer to each of the three. The first would be an update on the cork and bottle. This is something I've asked about in previous meetings and don't really seem to have gotten an answer. It appears to have been completely restored and have a new interior and a lockable door from Palm Canyon Drive that you can see through, but nothing is happening with the interior. The second question is,
why don't you let me handle these as you go through them?
Sure.
I may not, but my feeble brain may not remember the details. Cork and Bottle has gone through its renovation. The building owner has done the restoration on the exterior according to the HSPB's approvals. They are going to be seeking tenants, and until they do, the interiors will probably remain unfinished. I don't know what the current status is of the building permit application, whether it's been finalized or not, but I can find that out.
okay, great. And on that note, I seem to recall some years ago, some storyboards in the front of the building in the glass window that had like old pictures and were touting the upcoming restoration of the building. Is that something I'm remembering incorrectly? Was that something HSPB or the city did on behalf of the owner?
I'm not familiar with it. Something at Cork and Bottle?
Okay, maybe that would be a smart thing for us to look at if we have a budget for it. Because right now you're just looking into this big empty space And the plaque in the building, unfortunately, has been graffitied, which is really a shame. So maybe there's something we could talk about, maybe, just on the side to see if we can enhance the facade somehow so that people can read about the history of the building and how, it was dilapidated and now it's been saved. My second question was about the library. That was something that came up earlier in our discussion with the planning director. I had mentioned the sorry state of the exterior when I was there and how I had considered putting it on our project list for the work plan. Can staff shed any light on that? Was it on prior work plans? Was it removed? Is it a good idea? It seems like it could benefit from some designation.
I think that, as Director Fagg commented, all city buildings probably have a worthy amount of deferred maintenance that needs attention and needs some funding prioritization. Having said that, yes, the library, like many city facilities, is getting heavy use, and you see graffiti and things like that happen. Unfortunately, I think we can bring it to facility department's attention that there have been concerns about it. I think that things like graffiti and that kind of stuff, again, we just need to keep on top of it in terms of turning it into code enforcement. I think that the city, may be at a crossroads where it's going to start looking at its facilities rather than the poor orphan child with no shoes, and instead have the city facilities become the benchmark by which the rest of the private building owners should be maintaining their buildings.
Mhm.
It's very hard for the city to be pointing fingers at private building owners and demanding that they improve and fix up their building when the city buildings don't look any better. So I think it's an ongoing challenge. The city has had, boom and bust years, which have led to probably cuts in funding on maintenance and things like that. I don't know the whole dynamic. It's an area that I'm not, I don't work with on a regular basis, but I'll talk with Director Fagg about it and see if maybe there's something that we can look at globally in terms of city facilities and the kind of maintenance needs that they have.
Great, I appreciate that, Flint, Ken, for that update. And then the last question I had was regarding the Palm Springs Historical Society. I believe they're an entity of the city. And
I don't think they are anymore. I think they were separated as a 501c3.
okay, they are. And how long has that been going on? Do you know?
I think it's as long as I've been here at the city. I don't know exactly when they were jettisoned as their own organization, but I think that was done before I came to the city 14, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay, because I remember it differently that since you began, at least 10 years ago, I remember them being part of the city, but maybe I'm wrong on that. But I also remember that they would be more in tandem with city staff when it came to providing information and background for reports and nominations and so forth. And so it's surprising to me that these days, it doesn't seem like there's much interaction between the Palm Springs Historical Society and the HSPB and the city staff behind the HSPB, when it seems like there would be such an easy tool to utilize.
Well, it may be that you're not seeing things because it's not the kind of thing that's visible, but I'm in pretty regular contact with Renee Brown and others when it comes to different matters of seeking information on various properties, things that come in from the public that have questions that I can't answer. I often turn to the Palm Springs Historical Society staff to see what kind of resources and knowledge they may have. So, it isn't a situation where every single time we make a phone call to one another that it gets reported. But there is a dialogue and there is a relationship between the two organizations.
Great, good to know. I'm glad to hear that.
Now, maybe there's a way that it can be further enhanced. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I'm saying there is a relationship there, and it's one that's a working relationship as far as I'm concerned. I'm not aware of anything that's an impediment, and I certainly feel very comfortable and free to reach out to them when I have resources that I need. They have a certain agreement that they have set up with the city some time ago, I believe with the city manager, in which the use of some of their resources like photographs and stuff like that, we are given a certain allowance of a number of photos per year that they will provide to us at no cost. And then beyond that, it becomes a situation where we're having to pay for the use of their materials just like the public does.
Mhm. And then I might add, as we are inviting the Historical Society to be part of our symposium, we want them to participate and be part of the programming. And so we will involve them and give them an opportunity to work with us on the topics that are, most pressing for them in regard to preservation as well. So we will invite them to attend our meetings and help us too. So that's another way of working together, is through our symposium and the different community organizations that we want to be part of it. So that's a good strengthening method as well. So any other board member comments at this time? Okay, so that completes the agenda. Are there any comments? Does the staff have comments that they'd like to make?
Nothing in particular. I think we've pretty much covered most things today. And those things that remain lingering, or that I always joke about that I need for the Alzheimer's round, as we say in the planning department staff meeting, I'll pick up and communicate with you via email as needed. The one thing I will come back and just mention that I didn't really spend any time on in the discussion on your work plan priorities is the notion of possibly having guest speakers come in, perhaps on a quarterly basis or some periodic basis, who might simply do a small 10-minute or 15-minute presentation within the body of one of the HSPB meetings. That would be, a learning opportunity, both for board members and for the public who are watching these meetings. There are a lot of people around town. The names like Will Kleindienst and Tracy Conrad, Renee Brown, and many, many others who have a wealth of knowledge about history of Palm Springs. Patty Tuck over at the Tribe, many people who are knowledgeable, who I think would be willing to come in and share their knowledge in a little brief, like I say, 10-minute or 15-minute session within the HSPB meetings that would bring knowledge to everyone. I've shared with the new members, Miller and Hanson, that one of the enormous resources that we lost this past year in terms of education and outreach was Robert Imber, and I wish we had someone like Robert Imber who could do a tutorial for new members so that they do become familiar with, or become more familiar with the amazing history of this place. So that's a thought to just keep in the background.
Very good. Thank you. Any other further discussions, comments, or anything this evening? None. Okay, seeing no further discussion, this meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board is adjourned to the meeting of Tuesday, October 5, 2021 at 5:30. So we'll adjourn today at 7:06. And I thank you all for participating today in a very, very good, lively and serious discussion about many topics and all the tough jobs we have to do with this board. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yes. Bye.
No.